Go Pizza presents SDP, the Steve Dangle Podcast, with your hosts, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and Jesse Blake.
Let's go!
Well, here we are. I don't even know how to begin shows anymore, man. I don't even know where to start. But
Adam, start with the basics. What happened in the game last night?
You know, if I get another stick to hockey tweet when there's no hockey on, I think I'm just gonna. Well, I'm not gonna do anything actually because I don't.
At least have the balls to tweet me. Stick to Bundesliga and Korean baseball. And if you don't have the nuts to do that, then shut up.
So you were talking about
hockey is shutting down the show. Like,
yeah,
the
literally.
hockey shut down. So if we're sticking to it, let's just do the same.
And I'm not sure if you're aware, but like this is technically now our summer season because the season's going to start in August, and we could have gone down to one episode a week by now because there's not going to be any hockey till at least the 1st of August. So we may have to look at doing that in July anyway, just because we might need a break. But you know, ultimately, I think the fact is it's pretty tough to stick to hockey when there isn't any. And you know what I want to say? I want to say I really appreciate the people that reached out last episode over the episode. Thank you for listening. You know, these subjects are not easy, but as the world is finding out, you need to have them, and it seems like a good chunk of us are, and that's exciting and fulfilling. And I I saw you like protests today, like in Belgium. For what's gone on and obviously we'll get to some of the new statements because Jonathan Toews and Sidney Crosby and a few other stars have come out and kind of like a waterfall since our last episode. Some more descriptive than others, but hey, something is better than anything at this point. But I guess I want to start with the fact that I was so blown away with the comment section on YouTube, which I rarely read, but I went in and checked it out. And other than getting called a simp a few times by a bunch of fake accounts, like it's pretty amazing. Excuse my dogs. It's pretty amazing that that so many people decided to put so many positive things in there.
Oh,
and,
it was good, amazing.
Yeah,
I avoided it this time.
It was
good.
right?
Okay. Not the answer I was prepared for, Adam.
Yeah, no, I wasn't what I was prepared for either. That's why I made sure I was in a room with people when I read the comments, just so I could bitch if there was an issue. Why are you laughing, Steve?
I was drinking and I wasn't ready. I wasn't ready for that.
It's not good to go through comment sections alone. You should never go through them, but when you do go through them, you make sure that you're in the room with somebody.
So sometimes I'll be looking down and just I have angry eyebrows if I don't think about them. Mm-hmm. And sometimes my wife will it'll be silence in our room for 5-10 minutes, but she'll just see me looking down at my phone and just go, what? And she's right. I'm reading something that I shouldn't be. She's right.
Well, and on that subject, I want to bring
is that where we're starting?
Yeah. So we've talked about this a few times, and we talk about this all the time off the air about not responding to people that are clearly trying to troll. And the best part about this morning was some of the tweets that we got regarding the actual episode. Now, it was in response to Jesse posting the link. So if you saw Jesse's link, it got like 1,500 likes, 210 retweets.
To the last episode, yeah.
Yeah. And that's big on Twitter. Today, Jesse's comment was today, Steve Dangle, Adam Wilde, and I recorded a podcast. It's titled Black Lives Matter. We talked exclusively about social injustices in the Black community. I hope that you take the time to view it. Mm-hmm. So naturally, with a tweet like that, with a show like that, as somebody who's creating these shows, you expect that there's going to be some people who, obviously not with their real names, but come out of the woodwork and say whatever the hell they're going to say.
Not people, Adam. Andrew 869624189611.
Actually, Jesse, it was Andrew 6510167. And the 67 feels intentional, Drew.
So Andrew 6510167 said, Dude, I know I can't understand, but I had to turn this off. Racism is bad and whites need to fix it. I get white people are mostly guilty, but clumping us together doesn't make you sound any better than the problem. Racism goes beyond whites, Jesse. So here we have a white.
Let's never lose
white explaining racism to a black man, which I love.
It's not a white person, Adam. It is a white computer program. Like it wasn't a real person. It was a Twitter account that's clearly a bot that's just churning out these comments with whoever it's tagged in, and then it kind of inserts name or whatever, and then but the guy who's slipping down in his chair right now said, "Hey, today I'm gonna have an argument with a toaster.
Today I will defeat trolls once and for all." And so Steve responds, Adam and I said it too, because it's true. Open your mind and heart, which is a very thoughtful comment. But I wrote Steve back, and I wrote, Steve, I love you, and this is not a real person. and Steve said back, 8 numbers in the name, and exactly no tweets before today. Damn. Now,
I want to go back to something Jesse said. Toasters have a wide range of emotion, and some of you have not watched The Brave Little Toaster, and it shows. We just did not watch the sequel, The Racist Little Trollbot Toaster. All right? I never saw it. It was less popular. But it's a movie.
You might as well just yelled at your toasters.
Yeah, so here's the thing.
Whomst has not. Whomst among us has not yelled at their toaster.
Well, I
have that wimpy little flap at the bottom. The sole purpose is just to spill crumbs all over the place.
That's true. They have not figured out a toaster that doesn't spew crumbs.
Yeah.
I don't know why that is. Like, where's Dyson with their fucking Dyson or Apple need to come up with a toaster?
You know Dyson toaster?
Yeah.
It costs $800.
But you'll never ever.
I'll pay it. There are footprints on the moon and crumbs on my counter. It makes no sense.
It's true. Find me a salt and pepper shaker that worked too. Find me or a grinder that worked properly. That actually work. Yeah. Show me one. Anyway, the reason I bring this up is just some of the comments underneath this were very funny. And typical SDP listeners, the real ones, are very funny. And, what I've always said is watch out for the people that have no profile picture and a bazillion numbers in their name. And if you have no profile picture and a bazillion numbers in your name, and I'm not talking about 2 or 3 numbers, because you might, or even 4, you might have your birth date in it or something like that. I'm talking about 7 or 8. If it starts to get into phone number territory or credit card number territory, you're not a real person. And somebody actually responded and said, well, hey, wait a second. I'm a real person. This is the name Twitter gave me. And I said, I was going to say it back to them, but I didn't. I think I need to announce it to the world. If that is your Twitter name, then I have the right not to take you seriously. If you didn't want to take your Twitter name seriously and you took the name that Twitter gave you, then I have the right to believe that you're probably a Russian bot, which 99 out of 100 times you are. And this guy actually came out and said that this is a burner account. So this is somebody that listens to the show that wrote a burner account just so they could respond to this. And for that reason, to me, invalidates their opinion, and because they won't stand behind it. And number 2 is, who gives a shit? And that's where I have to bring on Steve, because Steve, we've talked about this for years, especially, and I used to do this too, to be very reactive. And Jesse was like, stop every time. Just stop. What are you doing?
All right. we can't all be perfect Jesse. Perfectly chill, zen Jesse. All right. We can't all be having a great day, level-headed about everything. I drink 1 coffee every couple days, Jesse.
I gotta say, after the last podcast, I've never received so many DMs, and I've just for the last 2 days, all I've been doing is trying to respond to all these DMs. It's like over 100, maybe. Mm-hmm. And then,
and then Steve responds
I'm
to
glad that
710.
I'm spending all of this time only answering all these people who have so many positive things to say, and I sit here with my 2 co-hosts, and one of them just decides, hey, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to signal out the one guy who's probably not a guy and comment back to him because he had something negative to say.
Yeah. Open your heart. Open your heart.
I'm going to defeat racism with this tweet.
You know, Steve went to war this morning. He won the troll wars. Sorry, it's over. Russia's quit.
Russia's quit. Exactly.
Now, the other thing about this that you need to know is that there was somebody who made a really good point in the thread, and they said, Adam, if this
believe it.
This person could be a listener, which we found out they are.
Yeah.
And they could be somebody that listened to the entire episode. Now, if you go back and you read the actual comment, the comment...
But why would we do that?
Was extremely generic. It's like, it's not all white dudes' problems, Jesse. Like, you could have looked at the Black Lives Matter on the title, wrote that, and not listened to a single minute.
Yeah.
And that's where I kind of go, yeah, no, that's too generic.
Or you did listen to the whole thing, which is more concerning.
Now, yeah, which which would make more sense, because remember from the Howard Stern movie, the people that hate it listen longer. Now,
yeah, you're ignorant or dumb. Strawberry or raspberry. They're both ice cream, sir.
What?
So I got
different flavors.
So I got to read this because this is hilarious. At Original Sin 33, because I said Andrew 65101167 was not real.
Say his whole name, damn it.
He wrote, hey now, Andrew 65101167 comes from a long line of 65101167s. His family crossed the ocean on 4523991 and helped settle the town of 2185298. Show some damn respect. Respect to you, Original Sin 33, because that is funny.
Yeah.
But
I am well aware that I do not always take my own advice, even the advice that I wrote in my own book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, and I
get mad.
It's relevant. It's relevant to what's actually happening, because this is a funny little story about Steve. But there's a lot of like trolls out there just trying to get you going, and telling them to fuck off. It might feel satisfying for about 3 seconds, but it's not. It's just a waste of your time. Like, it's not like engaging in a spirited debate with a person that will stand behind their own name is one thing. Engaging with trolls who are literally just trying to get you going and are not real is another. And you got to remember, there are people at home. It's like the South Park episode with Stan's dad. It's like, oh, I just do it for the lulz.
Kyle's dad.
Sorry, Kyle's dad. I just do it for the lulz, man. And that's really it. There's like a thing that people get off on. And so you just leave it, let it go. You know, there's a bunch of trolls out there, and you know, tell people who are real people to open your heart.
Because there are real trolls, like you said, who are distracting from the actual issues here.
Mm-hmm.
There are people who
elected politicians,
big ones in very prominent positions that are trying to distract from the actual issues that are going on. And those people are just trolls on a different level. So if we could all refocus and pay attention to what's important here, I think it'd be a better place.
That's right.
Thanks, Steve. Dad. Thanks, Dad. I really needed the pep talk, Dad.
So let me ask you this, Steve. Did you wake up?
You bring orange slices too there, Coach? I know I'm a child. I need the vitamin C.
Did you, Steve, did you just roll over and sort of wake up and answer that? Is that what happened? Or because that can happen, right? Where you read the comment before you read the name?
Yes. It's been a bad habit of mine, particularly over the past 2 weeks or a week, just because it's never been like this where every single time I check my phone, I expect to learn something new, because I often do. Mm-hmm. It's wild. And man, I went to bed like there's 7 or 8 hours worth of stuff I don't know, if I'm lucky. And yeah, that was just that was a mistake, and Steve Glynn legally would like to admit that I maybe shouldn't have talked to Andrew 69420, whatever the fuck.
Now, last episode, one of the major talking points was the lack of NHLers coming out with statements, and of course, right after the episode comes out, Jonathan Toews comes out with a beautiful statement.
A podcast jinx I am behind.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, hey, we'll take it. I'll read his in a second, but first I want to start with the biggest name in terms of leadership in the game. And you could say Connor McDavid is a better player, and I would agree with you, but Sidney Crosby has been the number one star in this league for 15 years. Yes. And there's no other way around that. He still probably is, right now, the more marketable name in the States. And I I think it's important when guys like him speak up. Now, it's still crickets from Connor McDavid. Still have not heard a thing, but Sidney Crosby, through his foundation, did reach out and said, what happened to George Floyd cannot be ignored. Racism that exists today in all forms is not acceptable. While I am not able to relate to the discrimination that the Black community and minority communities face daily, I will listen and educate myself on how I can help make a difference. Together, we will find solutions through the necessary dialogue and collective effort. So there's something. There's something.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, and the moment the foundation posted it, the Penguins then posted it. Sportsnet then posted it. It was retweeted over 1,000 times, and it spread just like we said it would. Mm-hmm. And listen, I saw some people go, "Oh, this is, shades of Michael Jordan from The Last Dance, and he's just a private person, and he doesn't want to get involved or say anything."
Michael got involved. Michael made a statement.
Michael finally did. Yeah, Republicans buy shoes too. Tweeted something about this. Mm-hmm. So, all I have to ask is, was that hard? You know what I mean? It got out there. It means something that it got out there, that he said it, and good. And now, and now what?
But the silence would have spoken so much louder than the actual words he did come out and say.
Yes.
Not saying anything means so much more than saying something in this situation.
And just like we said last episode, he does this, he does this, he does this, he does that. Great. Here is another really simple thing you can do.
And he did it. Let's be honest. It's a fucking layup, man.
Yes.
It's not hard to issue a statement and donate some money. And this is not a hard thing to get behind.
Adam, it's a pass. I don't even know if it's a layup.
It's an inbound pass. He doesn't have to do any work, technically. Somebody in Crosby's position could send a text or an email to people who can handle these things for him, who can write these statements, send them out, and donate the money. So if you really didn't do anything, that's crazy. That speaks volumes. So the fact that he did something is okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Good. There. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you. Yeah.
That's what it is. And then some people went even above and beyond. Subban donated $50,000 to George Floyd's daughter, and he didn't stop there. He got the NHL to match it. Mm-hmm. And Patrice Bergeron, stuff has been coming in so fast. Patrice Bergeron made a $25,000 donation today, and I don't remember who it was to. Tom Wilson has pledged money as well. A lot of good words.
Tom Wilson's
action
sentiment
too.
Was amazing too. What he wrote about the program that he was talking about. I would encourage you, if you're interested, to go check it out. I don't have it in front of me right now. I've actually got something else up that I think is important to the discussion as well. But what Tom Wilson wrote really blew me away. And it doesn't surprise me. The guy, I've had my differences with the way the guy plays on the ice, but there's no question that in that community, he does incredible things. And he, did it again and came and showed up. And that is what that is what anybody was asking for. It's just showing up. Now, let me ask you this. There's two things I want to hit here. The first thing is Connor McDavid. Because let's just be straight. There's been nothing. And, I hate to frame this in terms of is he now beholden to say something? Because we want this to be authentic. But I don't see how it could be inauthentic when someone's murdered on camera. Why the silence? Why still? He must know.
I don't know.
I don't know. Good question.
I don't think.
It's bad at this point.
I
fire
can't come
your
up
team.
with an excuse.
Bad advice. If you have a team around you that's saying no, sit this one out. Here's what I'm gonna throw this at you. So this is a music industry equivalent of what Sidney Crosby sort of used to do. Taylor Swift, one of the biggest artists in music, and was the top grossing tour for 7 straight years. You can love Taylor Swift's music, you can hate it, I don't care. That's really not the point here. The point is she was massively and is massively successful. And for a long, long time, because she came from country music, she wouldn't say anything that would decry the Republican Party, that would suggest to her followers that she didn't agree with some of the values that are associated with some of the music that she creates. Now, I'm not putting country music in that category, especially country music in Canada is very, very different than the States. And it's very much aligned with what you would say are Canadian values on the whole. But, country music in the States has been very quiet in the past when it comes to these social issues. And a good chunk of that is because it's mostly white people, right?
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a progression. Things have changed. We've seen a far more of a response from country music now. But I can tell you that the Taylor Swift playbook in 2012, 2011, 2013, 2014, whatever, was to say nothing politically. When they tried to, and I interviewed her around that time. Now, I wasn't trying to like trap her into questions, but there was a lot of trying to push Taylor Swift to talk about things like gay marriage or things like, anything. And the first time that you ever heard Taylor Swift talk about anything was in the 2016 election. And she was talking about her home state, and she was talking about a Republican governor that she was hoping that she was coming out against. She was, supporting a Democratic candidate, and it had a lot to do with Donald Trump running. And for a long, long time, her people were freaked right out that her saying anything would affect her album sales, would affect her merch sales, would affect her ticket sales. Now she's come out, she said that, she's already broken out on her own, and none of that's been affected. Nobody looks at Taylor Swift, like no Taylor Swift fan is like, well, she stood on the right side of history. I sure hate that. And I think that's been the playbook for a lot of these NHL guys for a long, long time. They might have their personal beliefs, but I believe, as Logan Couture said, and Jason Zucker eloquently pointed out as well, being silent and being supportive, being silently supportive is not enough. And for Taylor, in this particular instance, now she's come out, she's very, very much flies her flag of what she believes in, and probably more popular than ever. And she hasn't really put out the strongest albums of her career in the last, couple of years, but still massively successful. When you look at what the NHL could be doing, and I'm relating this specifically to Connor McDavid, people will not forget this. This is not an incident that is small. We're now on day 9 of massive protests worldwide. So a small 3-sentence, 4-sentence statement goes a long way, as we saw with Sidney Crosby. 3 or 4 paragraphs, as we saw with Jonathan Toews and many, many others. I wonder what on earth could be holding them back. And I wonder if it's just bad PR reps.
I don't know, man.
I
really don't know.
I know I told you that long-winded Taylor Swift story to tell you that she's more popular than ever because she stands for something. Mm-hmm. When I was put into mornings at Virgin Radio, the head of programming for iHeartRadio in Canada said to me, if we're going to give you this gig, can you make us a promise? And I said, sure. And he said, fucking stand for something. And I said, what do you mean by that? And he said, you can't be neutral on things anymore, important things. And that was a message for the entire show.
And Adam got up there and said, go Habs, go.
Go Habs. I freaking love them. No, but that's the point here, is you got to stand for something, especially now. And this is not a hard side to stand on.
No, this isn't even Republicans wear shoes too.
No.
What are you going to say? Racists wear shoes too? Like, right?
If Connor McDavid wants to not say anything and just shoot pucks and skate around for the rest of his life, then okay, you can do that, but that's how we're going to remember you. Like, we're not going to think of you as anything more than that. And that's disappointing. That's sad. And we'll judge. I'm personally going to judge him for it because his silence, like we've said, it says a lot. So that's how he's going to, we remember the people, like you said, Adam, who stand up for things, who have said something in their career and use their platform for good and go beyond sports. And if Connor McDavid doesn't want to do that, then okay, do that, but don't expect anything more from me, for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. And I think that affects, I think that genuinely affects, this would just be my personal opinion, but that plays into more than just hockey. Like, hockey has tried for so long to sequester itself. Oh, he's a great leader on and off the ice. Well, this is the off the ice, right? And, you want to be captain of Team Canada one day?
Forget it.
I just don't see how that, like, and here's the thing. Hockey's dumb enough that that'll still happen. But the reality is that it's not going to be, there's going to be a segment of us, and I will be among them. If you don't stand up and speak now, then I'm going to have a really hard time swallowing that. Mm-hmm. And I don't care if he wins 80 gold medals. I don't care. Yeah. It's still going to be hard.
I'm not going to forget this moment.
No.
It's so easy.
No, exactly. And you know, you could come up with something as vanilla as Mitch Marner's statement, which is, I don't know what to say, and I'm going to sit back and listen. That's fine. I mean, I said the same thing on the last show. I was saying I didn't know what to post, and I understand that point of view. I get where he's coming from. Sit back, listen, absorb. Right?
You're not going to be on the honor roll, but it's a passing grade. Right.
But at least he acknowledged it. He didn't acknowledge the murder directly. But you know, I think it's okay to say, listen, I don't know what to say, so I'm just going to sit back and listen. But acknowledge it. You have a platform. And I think Connor McDavid's got a responsibility to do that. I would be shocked if by the end of the day we haven't heard something. Now that Crosby's out with something, I feel like McDavid's going to.
Yeah,
and Ovechkin, by the way, did as well.
Ovechkin was
right after our show.
Yeah. So
and Taves, I think, was during. And I will say, I directly criticized the Bruins last show. And if you're going to come late, bring donuts. And they came out with as good a statement as any NHL team has. Mm-hmm. So they were late, but at least, you know, they came to the party prepared. And a lot of the players that we saw post after our show, I thought had some of the better statements. So, I mean,
and sometimes it takes time to absorb and make a statement.
Maybe you're working on it. Maybe you're working on it, but you know, I'm 100% with you guys. You got to say something eventually. And crying out loud.
Just looking at all the statements, one thing I'm going to remember, at least in this moment right now, is Ben and Jerry's. Like,
oh man,
you can't be behind ice cream.
Ice cream company came out. They said, hey, this is not the result of a bad apple. It's because of a bad system. We hate racism. They explained Jim Crow and segregation.
And Jamestown.
And then they outlined ways to combat racism and systematic prejudices against the Black community. Like, it's an ice cream. And I that's sticking with me anytime I'm in my metro across the street. I'm looking at the ice cream counter. I want to get some ice cream. Like, I remember Ben and Jerry.
It's also really good.
Also, yeah.
It's also really good. But
yeah, that's when I'm walking down the ice cream aisle, I'm going to be like, I'm getting Ben and Jerry's, you know, because activism.
Legitimately, it's going to stick with me.
But that's always been their brand. They've been like that for 50 years.
I had no idea.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, the Cherry Garcia ice cream is named after Jerry Garcia, the famous guitar player. And they have been like, I believe Ben and Jerry were both like two hippies who were like serious, like really, you know, pro civil rights and pro equality and stuff before it was something that was codified into law. So it's funny that it's not funny and it's not surprising that they came out with that, because that's been the company mandate from the beginning. And it's funny to see an ice cream company do that, but I mean, what an impact. Mm-hmm. And
if your brand is good ice cream and anti-racism, you're winning life. Like, that's your legacy.
Here's the question.
What a great legacy.
How is not every ice cream brand such? You know what I mean? Like, or every brand. This is not hard. This is a very low bar for setting.
What a ridiculous conversation.
It says so much about the world that anti-racism, on the completely serious note, anti-racism is still a thing we're fighting. And that's what this whole thing is about.
Yeah. The sign, I'm 61 and I can't believe we're still protesting this shit.
Exactly.
Have you seen that? Like, I saw that at one of the rallies.
Different
one other thing I think we need to discuss. Well, there's a few other things. As of yesterday morning, I believe, the Red Wings, Senators, and New York Rangers had not issued statements about this. As of now, the last NHL team to not issue a statement regarding what's going on is the New York Rangers. Now, that's not when you know how discombobulated things are with the Knicks and the Rangers, not entirely surprising. However, you would think, as I said last episode, that Gary Bettman would be hounding those guys to say, are you, like, come on, guys, are you kidding me? The New York Rangers are a more valuable hockey team, at least recently, than the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're valued a bit more because they're in New York and they're the New York Rangers. They are one of the biggest names in the sport. And while their global brand might not be as big as, say, like a Leafs or something like that, they're flipping huge. And such an important part of the NHL's revenue, such an important part of the business model. They've got insane fans who love them and are of every race and creed in a metropolitan, cosmopolitan city like New York. And it is surprising, and a city like New York that's seen a ton of protests, it is surprising to me that they have not come up with anything yet. And you have to think that comes from the top.
Mm-hmm. Well, James Dolan did speak on the issue and said that none of his the teams he owns will be making a statement.
That guy sucks.
He's just the worst.
That guy sucks so bad. And he owns multiple teams and multiple sports, right?
Yep. And it's like Washington's football team. You know, their name is literally a slur, and they're like, they put out a black square yesterday. Like, are you kidding me?
And the 49ers.
Oh,
the 49ers. A lot of they were, out of all the this U's I saw yesterday, they were the biggest this U.
Yeah. Yeah.
Can I read Dolan's statement?
Please do.
So we have clarity on the issue. He said, "We know that some of you," this was an email to internal employees. "We know that some of you have asked whether our company is going to make a public statement about the killing of George Floyd by a Minneapolis police officer. This is a turbulent time in our country. The coronavirus and civil unrest have taken their toll on our way of life. We at Madison Square Garden stand by our values of respect and peaceful workplace. We always will. As companies in the business of sports and entertainment, however, we are not any more qualified than anyone else to offer our opinion on social matters."
It comes straight from the top, and it's garbage.
So that's what he said. That's why he's not doing it.
You know, it's funny. You could give James Dolan a roadmap to like the exact roadmap to heaven, and he'd end up in hell. Like he's just the guy that makes the wrong choice at every move, and you wonder how he became a billionaire. Like you're like, and it's sort of one of those things that you just don't it's like you give him the instruction manual to us, like an IKEA piece of furniture, and he can't build it. You know, like it's so easy. It's so easy. The answer's right there, and he can't do it. And I think it's because a guy like him, I don't even think it's a reflection of whatever his opinions are. I think it's just because he doesn't like to be told what to do, and he flips off the world every time. You know, if you ask Knicks fans how they feel about this guy and what a pain in the ass he is, and how terrible he treats people. I mean, Charles Oakley, a Knicks legend, how he treated him. And I don't understand how James Dolan ever was successful, because he is such an unsuccessful guy that just gets in the way of everything. He's like the rich Eugene Melnick. He really is. You know, he's got real money. I don't know how he did it. I don't know much about his background, but he is one of the worst leaders I've ever seen in sport. It's crazy. He's a throwback to the Harold Ballards or the family that used to own the Blackhawks, who I think still actually do own the Blackhawks, but their grandfather.
The Wirtz family.
Yeah, the Wirtz. Yeah. Do they still own them?
They do.
Partial?
I'm trying to.
But the grandfather was like way out of touch.
Yeah, I forget. Was it Bill?
Yeah, I think it was Bill.
Yeah, kept the games off TV and everything.
He was put in positions by his father, it sounds like.
No.
Because he originally worked at Cablevision, and then his dad sent him to like a radio station to be the CEO. And then he came back and was the CEO of Cablevision. That's kind of where he made all his money. I don't know. His Wikipedia page is very vague, but there's not like a big story about like him making all this money.
So it was his dad.
I don't know, because
it's like Trump. It was all his dad.
The answers are here, but
it's just his dad.
Yeah.
So you get the visionary father, who in most cases is a huge dick, and then you get the son who's just a huge dick without the vision. It's crazy.
And the grandfather who was arrested at a KKK rally.
That's right. Yeah, there you go.
But we're not ready for that, are we? No, but we're not ready for that.
So I'm sorry, Jesse, go ahead.
I was just going to add, it also notes here that Dolan once lost $250 million in a failed Wiz electronics business. So
Wiz?
Wiz is an electronics company. He once started a store, a retail chain, and he once lost $250 million running that business into the ground.
$250 million. Sorry, I'm sorry. After the Keandre Miller incident, and you're the only one left, you have to say something, and you ought to be ashamed of yourself.
Well, if I'm
the top, I bet people who work for the Rangers are mortified by this.
How do you think people for the Knicks feel? A predominantly black employed team.
Yep.
Like, how do you think the Knicks players feel? Who's going to sign in New York? Kevin Durant and
couldn't get
Kyrie
anyone
Irving
anyway.
are laughing at this guy.
Couldn't get anyone anyway.
No one's going to New York. No one's going to New York in the NBA. And because who could play? Who could do that? And then and with Keandre Miller, for example, like this, he's a kid. He's been thrust into this against probably his wishes. He certainly didn't want to be the poster child for this, a couple months ago when it happened on Zoom.
He's just trying to answer fan questions.
Exactly. And so how do you think he feels when his own organization won't stand up?
If I'm one of those other owners in either of those leagues, I try and get James Dolan out of there. I try and make him sell that team because you don't want that person in your club. This is what we're trying to do here. We're trying to eradicate people who are unwilling to stand up to racism. And James Dolan is clearly on that list. And if you're one of the other 29 or 30 owners in the leagues, you don't want him in that club.
No.
Your little group where you're affecting a large swath of the world,
Can I give you an idea of the bare minimum they could do? Keandre Miller himself released a statement on Twitter on June 1st. So this is 2 days ago. This is Monday, the day we did our last show. It's, 250 words, several paragraphs, really thoughtful, et cetera, et cetera. The Rangers' last tweet of any kind was May 30th. They didn't even retweet him. Like we're talking bare minimum stuff here.
They didn't even do a black square.
They didn't do nothing. What was their last like? Let me see.
The Knicks either. The Knicks, they're nothing. Maybe they're. I hope the employees are protesting him.
Their last like, a tweet from May 29th. My little goalie just signed up all the way from Louisville, Kentucky. She's so excited. Like, you haven't touched the New York Rangers. 1.4 million followers. You haven't touched your Twitter account in 5 days.
Yep. And Tony D'Angelo even came out with a statement. And that guy,
you're behind Tony.
Guy
Adam
called people racial slurs in his junior career, for which I don't know if he's ever apologized.
That I don't know.
I don't know.
This is really pathetic looking at what they've done. Wow. Like
you're behind. And Tony D'Angelo is like, well, he's making about the looters now on his Twitter because of course he is. But
listen, I did bad at some things in school. I got a few 20s and 30s on it. You didn't even hand it in.
Yep.
Anything. Brutal.
Yeah. I once showed up to a class in university. I think it was an English class, and I didn't read the book that we were doing the essay on, so I handed in a blank test. And I got a 0.
Wow, you didn't even try.
I don't think I've ever told anybody that story.
Wow, man.
I didn't know the book. I didn't read it.
Dude.
It was a surprise test, and I got a 0.
So this would never fly in university, but this was a high school thing. This was a teacher trying his best to extend an olive branch to a student who just clearly didn't care. And he was going to do the same thing on a test. He's like, sir, I didn't read it. I did not read the book. And there was a question on it, like write an essay about, I don't remember what the book was. And the teacher just goes, there's marks for spelling and grammar. Write anything. And he read it aloud to the whole class. And it was literally like, I like chicken. I like pork too. Sometimes a good old beef hamburger. Chicken is my favorite. And he read it to the whole class, and it was great. And he only got I think it was a 2 out of 5, 2 out of 6.
He got something.
He got something.
Yeah, a 0. What do they tell you in when you're grading on a curve? 0 is a killer. 1 is like a million times better. A 0 will murder your grade. It will just destroy it. Yeah. And I mean, in this case, it's your public image. So I cannot believe the Rangers and Knicks wouldn't, but then I can. Now, Another thing I do want to talk about, and I think this is a positive thing ultimately, is growth. There's a lot of people who are going through a lot of growth, and a lot of people who, like myself, just were blissfully unaware that any of this existed. If you were to ask me when we started this show about most of this stuff, I would have had zero understanding of it. I would have known racism existed, probably not to this extent, and had no idea, even a fraction of an idea of what it's like to grow up as a person of color. And this being on this podcast, being exposed to many, many, many different points of view has really helped. And obviously what's going on in the world has really helped. And that's why I want to shine a spotlight here on Kendall Coyne Schofield now. A tweet from 2016. So disgusted with Colin Kaepernick. Soldiers fight for this country every day so you can make millions. Now you contrast that with yesterday when she said Black Lives Matter. Not just today, every single day. We must choose to educate ourselves, listen, and act to resist the oppression and injustices that stand in the way of that vision. # Blackout Tuesday. Now, there were a lot of people who were like, that was a this you thing.
This you?
Mm-hmm. Now, she came out with a statement later, and I think this is really important. She said, I was one of the people who initially thought Colin Kaepernick kneeling was disrespectful. I reacted to what he was doing instead of why. Then I listened and I learned. Instead of just deleting a misinformed tweet I posted 4 years ago, I should have been clear back then and now, not just knowing it, but I should have said it. So let me be absolutely clear. It was never about the flag. It was never about my family members who served. It wasn't about me. It always was and is about George Floyd and the countless others who came before him. It's about justice and equality. I know better. I will continue to do better. To me, that looks like growth.
Yeah. Kudos to her.
Well, I wanted to open it up to you guys because I think that there has to be some room for that, right? We are trying to educate people, which means that their opinions from 4 years ago probably going to be out of date. I know mine certainly are.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I think the whole idea here of everybody speaking out is to change minds, because that's the only way any change is going to happen, is if we get a collective consensus that racism is bad and it is prevalent in society and that we need to eradicate it somehow, or at least create a system where it can't be exploited. Mm-hmm. So the fact that she was willing to speak openly about that, I think is so powerful, because that's the entire idea here. The entire idea is to change minds, and hers was changed. So you can't say enough about how great that is.
I'm reminded of the Michael Che thing that I retweeted earlier, where he was trying to explain Black Lives Matter versus All Lives Matter, and just the little part where you just go, racism's bad. Like that's holy shit, that's what we're fighting over right now. Yeah. Like, it's ridiculous you even have to say it.
And we're not even trying to change minds like from 4 years ago. We're trying to change mind from like last week before you saw the George Floyd video. Mm-hmm. We're hoping that since that point, a couple of weeks ago when we were just eating hot dogs on YouTube Live, that since that point,
oh my God, that was
now on June 3rd, that your mind has changed and that you've taken the time to research some of these things and realize what is actually happening in the world and the issues that matter to certain communities and how they're being affected, and that your mind is open now and changed.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so you blew my mind with that message last night. You're like, by the way, we ate hot dogs on May 1st.
Yeah, that's why I brought
I was like,
up.
what?
It was a month ago.
God. What a decade this last month has been.
Right?
It's crazy.
The Rudy Gobert announcement that he had COVID, that was in like 2012.
I know.
Remember when Tom Hanks had it?
Yes. That was the next day.
In Australia.
Or was it that night? I can't remember. Yeah, like,
Yeah. Okay.
Man. Like, David Ayers, did that really happen? Are we sure?
I think it did.
Remember
when we were outraged?
Enough things have happened over the past 3 months that we can just forget that happened.
Yeah, I think
stop changing that. You can't ever forget.
No,
why? Damn it! The video, right?
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, what she said was terrific, and I don't think you could ask anything more from a person right now, especially in this climate.
Well, and I don't blame people for asking the question, like, "Hey, you did write this. You know, you should be accountable for this." And she was. Yeah. I don't blame people for asking the question. But I do want to caution a little bit against too much of the gotcha thing. Mm-hmm. Like, we've uncovered the next racist. There are enough outward racists. I think what we want to do is evolve opinions. And you don't do that by, my favorite term, tap dancing on someone's grave. You know what I mean? You don't do that by saying nana nana boo boo. You do that by saying, hey, listen, that's not a good look. And when you can finally get them to come around as to why it's not only is it not a good look, forget the look, it's not a good and accurate statement, period. It's an ignorant statement. But she stepped up to the plate, full respect. It's awesome. And that's leadership. That's acknowledging you're wrong. And she's a leader, especially in the women's game. I mean, she's a huge star. We need stars like that to step up. And look at that. The women's game stars will step up. I mean, name a star in the PWHPA that has not stepped up. Like, every one of them have said something. And we're still talking about how certain NHL teams and certain superstar NHL players still haven't said something.
Like, it's... Yeah,
sure is interesting.
Sorry to go back to the Rangers, but like Jesus Lord, it's not even that they haven't said anything; it's that they did say something, and then it's that they're not going to say anything else.
Right. If I were to counsel Connor McDavid, if I were to counsel James Dolan, what you don't want to do is wait for your first interview when someone says, "What do you think?" and "Why didn't you say anything?" You don't want that.
I think you'll have better luck with McDavid than Dolan.
Well, no. Here's the thing: McDavid would say, well, it's obviously bad and I don't like it. And, like a typical hockey player speak. But you don't want to wait for somebody to ask you. Take the initiative, step up, say something. That's what the expectation is. You want to be a superstar in this game, in this day and age. Can't sit in the sidelines anymore, man. It's time. And we'll move on from that. So I think, when we talk about where the NHL is going with this, and with PK donating his money, with Taze with his statement, Crosby with his, very uncomfortable conversations coming in the NHL. And I think the 31 Thoughts podcast sort of gets into this as well. How do we make sure that we don't lose momentum? Because this has been a problem before. There's been a lot of words, not necessarily been a lot of follow through. And I don't expect us to solve that today, but what do we do within the hockey community, and this is our tiny little corner of it, to not lose that sort of momentum? Because this is, when hockey comes back and, maybe things calm down, although there's an American election coming, so things are not going to calm down. It's easy, and it doesn't need to be something that is like, there's like some big sweeping thing. My worry, though, is that, we have these conversations, these things happen, everybody means well, and then in a week or two or three, something else comes up and we lose momentum. And I think, especially in hockey, we've seen some progress, and I would really like for that to continue. What's that got to look like?
And you mentioned the 31 Thoughts podcast, and they did have Kim Davis, the NHL's executive vice president for social impact and growth initiatives, on the show, their last episode. And it gave me some hope, because she is a Black woman, and she talked about how going forward, it's about creating that real change. And she spoke about getting the NHL into the communities where they don't see the NHL. She had a son who grew up playing sports, and he did not play hockey because he didn't feel invited to the hockey team. It was predominantly white, and he chose a different sport mainly because he didn't see it. He didn't see people like him playing hockey. So if there's a lot of community outreach within the NHL game right now. The NHL does a great job of being in these small towns, but getting them into these places where people don't see hockey players and don't see hockey at all is so important going forward. And when the game resumes, when you're allowed to see people again, and you can go out and do these community initiatives, it's so important for these NHL players and their different foundations and outreach programs to get into situations where there are young Black kids so that they can grow up and understand that hockey is a great sport with a lot of great people in it, and that you can grow up loving this game, and a lot of great things will come out of it. But until different communities, people of different backgrounds, until they see the game, they won't have an understanding of it. So I think the NHL, as long as they start right after this and they start moving on those issues, then something can actually change.
Ryan Reeves was on the radio with us today on Sportsnet, and he talked about that representation that was really important. If you go to a hockey camp and there's Black children there and children of other ethnicities, you can't just show up with 10 white guys. You know what I mean? Even if they're really good hockey players. Mm-hmm. You gotta, you can show up with some. No one's saying you can't, but you gotta show everyone this is what hockey looks like. This, you can do it too. You are welcome here. But I think that's really important.
Yeah, even if you're showing up with five white guys, don't just take those 5 white guys to the white neighborhoods. Mm-hmm. Take those 5 white guys and plump them in the Black communities. It'll do wonders for hockey. Give it a shot. I believe that Kim Davis will try that, especially if this spotlight doesn't stop shining on these issues going forward.
And let me add this in there. Like, what do we do going forward? When you speak out about something, the reaction from people has been largely positive, but the reaction you want is not one of pleasant surprise. You know what I mean? You want this to be, let everyone know where you are. When Blake Wheeler spoke up first, everyone was like, absolutely. That makes perfect sense, because we've known the kind of person Blake Wheeler is for a long time. When Braden Holtby said what he said, of course, there's countless receipts for Braden Holtby. Go Braden. Good for you. Don't be the typical, pucks in deep, give it 110% hockey guy that's all you do. Don't just be that. Don't simply be good at hockey. Like the
it's
effort
not even don't, it's you can't.
Yeah, and you can't. The effort that it took for the players to say what they have, I think, was pretty minimal compared to the impact it had. So don't let it be, don't let the reaction to the next time you speak out about something be one of pleasant surprise.
Interesting.
I definitely, through this whole thing, I always go back to, hey, this happened 100 years ago. This happened 50 years ago. This happened 25 years ago. This happened in 2014. This happened in 2016. Black people have been dying at the hands of police for a long time, and the system's been in place for a long time. And I definitely worry that, okay, we did this, that we saw all the riots this past weekend. We did these things on Monday. Okay, we had Blackout Tuesday, and now it's Wednesday. And maybe by Friday, we have another news cycle, internally. So I carry that with me, that I'm like, okay, I don't want these people to we have momentum here. Let's not stop this. Let's keep talking about these issues. Let's keep having these athletes talk. Let's keep having people in the media talk about it. So yeah, it's definitely a concern, but you can't really worry about the future. You just got to keep working towards it, right?
Right. Absolutely.
The darkest sign that I saw was, you think it's bad now, wait till they let him off with no charges. Yeah. And I was just like, holy shit. But even that changed just a few minutes before the show began. Chauvin has now, I think they're upgrading the charge to second-degree murder, and the 3 other officers involved are being charged with something as well. I don't know if it was announced before the show. And it's because people didn't let up. Mm-hmm. That's why they didn't do this out of the goodness of their hearts.
I think
because people forced them to.
I think Minnesota has also filed a human rights complaint against Minneapolis's police department. I believe I read that today. I don't know what that means, but and I don't know. Yeah, it sounds great, but I just don't is it a paper move? Like, what does it mean? What will the outcome of that be, other than hopefully, I mean, maybe this is the best outcome, a gigantic review of everything going on.
It's funny because a lot of things are coming out about the department, and they've had a massive review before. They had an openly gay, I believe it was the police chief, and she gained some national spotlight. I believe when Obama was president, he had met with her and all this stuff. And then she exposed all these problems within the organization. And then she actually herself got into trouble within the police community in Minneapolis. I don't have the details. I don't have the story up in front of me, and I don't want to just guess on it. But yeah, so there has been a lot of trouble in Minneapolis with their police force.
Can I say something exposing my own ignorance for a second?
Sure.
Minneapolis, St. Paul is the last place I would have thought something like this would have been the touch point for. It just is. I would never. Like, you could give me most American capitals and it would be like among the last. Just not my impression of the state, not my impression of the city. I was very, very surprised. Maybe I shouldn't have been.
Shows you how deep-rooted the issue is, right?
Oh, yeah, 100%.
No,
really. The thing is,
I'm not going to lie. I was like, Minnesota?
Yeah, well, exactly. And it could, that's the thing, though. That's, you touched it, I think, Steve, is that it's deep-rooted everywhere. I mean, I even saw, I don't know if you guys saw the video of the protests happening in Seattle, which is also known as a very progressive city. And it's like a bird's eye view from a building looking down, and there's a line of riot police, and then there's protesters and throngs of protesters, nothing happening. And then all of a sudden you can see the pepper spray come out, people start running, and then the tear gas comes out, and they really disperse. That's the stuff that you're like, for what reason?
Oh, Adam, you might be asked to apologize for saying that tear gas is tear gas.
Oh, what?
What's that?
The White House literally asked reporters to issue a retraction saying that their tear gas was not tear gas. It was, in fact, something that was basically tear gas.
I don't know what that is.
We live in the upside down. I don't blame you for not knowing what that is, because there's something every 5 minutes.
Yeah, I've never.
This is why people are sleeping 2 hours a night. Because something happens every 5 minutes. This is why I wake up red-eyed and tweeting at Andrew 6'9" Takashi friggin'.
Steve, I thought through this whole thing you'd be getting so much more sleep because you have nowhere to go now. You don't go into like the Sportsnet offices. You don't have to come down and record the podcast with us. Why aren't you like fucking sleeping 12 hours a day?
Oh, naps. You guys are lucky. I'm jealous of you because I'm not jealous of your schedule, but the fact that you guys have the ability to nap. It's like I'm an EASHL player, and I don't have napping in one of my slots. It's just not in my abilities.
You can't nap?
I nap probably, I'm not kidding, once a month.
Wow. I nap almost every day. I have to.
God, I'm so jealous.
I think that means, Steve, you're getting enough sleep.
Yeah, maybe.
No,
I think
it really doesn't.
Adam and I nap because we wake up so early.
Yeah.
Like we're up at 4 a.m. and we got a nap.
Just misery. You know what? What's great about being up at 4 a.m. is you don't wake up and open Twitter first thing when you wake up that early. You're just trying to just be alive. So
that was the one nice thing about doing morning radio in the summer about a year ago is it was nothing except like a couple Australians and British people I followed. like that was it. Yeah.
Both of you did morning radio on the Fan, right?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
How did you guys handle the games the night before?
Exhaustion. just exhaustion.
I woke up and read. I mean, I would watch them as much as I could, but there's also like to suggest that you could sit there and watch every game when it's baseball season and there's 40 million of them going on.
Right.
Sometimes there's double headers. Like you need to read. And so I would get up early to read a lot of the things. And the Jays sucked, so it was pretty easy. Like they're gonna lose, and who are they trading Josh Donaldson for? That was basically the question. And then it was Kawhi. So
I listened to the Kawhi stuff was very helpful, but I listened to the overnight radio on the way in.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, it's you do need to know your stuff, and you do need to watch part of the game. But the reality is, with most games, the way ratings work is most people pay attention to the first part of it and then kind of drift out. The ratings kind of go whoop, and then they kind of sink down as the game goes on because people go to bed, they have lives, they've got kids to put down, they've got whatever. So you got to catch a little bit of the flavor of the game, figure it out, and talk about it. And you can talk about events that happened in the game without having seen them live. You just have to see them. You have to make sure that you saw them. So I'd always have the highlights on, and I would, I lived right across the street at that point from Rogers.
Oh yeah.
So I would just put on Sports Center on my Sportsnet app, Sportsnet or on my Sportsnet app, and I would watch it as I walked over the thing because no one was on the road, right? So yeah, and it helped that Greg Brady is like a encyclopedia, like he's like a photographic memory. So if I didn't know something, he could pick up the slack. And Hugh Burrell is probably the kindest human being on the play. The list of nice people that I've compiled, Hugh Burrell's at the top.
There's a lot of people that you've put at the top,
but Hugh is the best. He's so great, and so he always had his updates and stuff like that too. And the thing is that with morning sports radio, it's a trend thing, right? It's never just the game the night before, unless there was like a major event. It's the Leafs have won 5 of their last 6.
Right.
They won last night, but it's 5 of their last 6. Let's talk about that, and they bring on guests and everything else. But if I was like if I was just doing like a hockey show, I think I would probably stay up, watch the games, and just suck it up and be tired. But it's
hard.
It is hard.
It was something I could do because I knew I was doing the show for a few days.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's not a sustainable way to be.
For the rest of your life.
Yeah. I had to do highlights for the Sochi Olympics, and my shift started at midnight. And that was something I was able to do for, I think it was 4 days on, 3 days off, 3 days on, or something like that.
Oh.
And it was the only reason I was able to do it is because it wasn't like, if I didn't have those 3 days off, I don't know how I would have done it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It would have been impossible. I did not change the way I lived.
I've always said, and shift workers will know what I'm talking about here. It's harder to jump into a shift than it is to do it sustained over years. So, when we talk about like rotations that firefighters or like paramedics or whatever would have, it's tougher on the first day than it is any other day. And eventually your body finds some sort of rhythm. But if you're like, whenever people come up and they like sub in on a morning show and they're like, wow, this is so hard. I don't know how you do this every day. And it's like, well, that's because your body's not accustomed to this, and it's going to be hard. And so you do have to remember that too. Like there are doctors and nurses that are on rotating schedules for their whole lives, right? So it's like, well, this week I'm doing days, and then next week I'm doing evenings, and then the next week after that I'm doing overnights into the early morning. That is crazy hard.
And the worst advice I got throughout all that is, because I'm like, okay, in order to not die throughout all this, I have to sleep when it's light out. And I had difficulty doing that. And I was told, take melatonin. And so I took melatonin, which I don't even know exactly what it is, but basically it makes you sleep. And I would wake up like I'd been punched in the head repeatedly while I was asleep, just completely disoriented. And a bunch of my friends who are shift workers, mostly paramedics, were like, no, actually, over a sustained period of time, that's terrible for you.
Yes, it is.
Because it makes it
subs in your melatonin.
Yeah, because melatonin is something that naturally occurs in your body when you're trying to fall asleep and wake up. Like it just kicks in automatically based on your circadian rhythm. So if you're taking it all the time and just using it all willy-nilly, you're ruining your body there, Steve.
Where were you when you discovered you were the dumbest person on a podcast with your name in
it? Jesse's one of the most, or at least has been in the past, the most dedicated sleepers that I've ever known. Like he goes to bed. When do you go to bed?
I try. Like I've been slipping a little, but I tried like 7:30 to 4 a.m. This is my consistent schedule.
What was that word you used?
Your circadian rhythm?
Isn't that a bug?
No,
it makes the buzzing noise in the summer. It's a circadian.
Are we doing a press conference today?
Yes, we are.
Let's do it.
All right. Today's press conference question comes from...
Steve looks like he needs to say something.
Oh, go ahead, Steve.
What is it, Steve?
I just wanted to read a tweet of actual hockey news.
Oh, okay, good. This is good.
It's from Greg Beecham, who works for the Associated Press. Ducks GM Bob Murray. So he did a press conference like right at the beginning of the show. Bob Murray says he tried to stay out of the dressing room this season to allow Dallas Eakins to coach. But now he feels that was a mistake. In quotes, that was a mistake. Some of the kids were allowed to get away with murder this year, and that's over. Accountability in this group is going to change. Which sounds an awful lot like Dallas Eakins is getting fired. Or a bunch of Ducks are getting traded. That's a pretty strongly worded statement from a general manager, don't you think?
Yeah, especially one that's done everything he can not to assemble a good team for the last 3 years. Sure seems like blame placing to me. And I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for the position that the Ducks are in. They're the ones that signed all the bad deals they're on.
Oh, here we go. Connor McDavid.
Good. All right.
This is
great.
This is what you get when you ask, I guess.
Read it, Steven.
Like everyone else, I watched the horror of George Floyd's murder and felt helpless and sick to my stomach. And as I have watched the many protests against racism and social injustice that have been taking place around the world, I realized that I need to do more to educate myself, ... that I need to learn more about the history of racism in our countries, plural, and to listen to the voices and the perspectives of the Black community and other racial minorities to try and understand how I can help to affect positive change going forward. As a young white male and pro athlete, I recognize that we live a very privileged life. I believe that the time is now for all of us to get out of our comfort zones, not to sit idly on the sidelines, and to be part of the solution to ensure that we end racism in our society. Connor McDavid.
Great.
There it is.
Awesome.
Well said. That's perfect.
If you come late, bring donuts.
Yep, that matters.
Yeah.
Okay, Jesse.
The press conference question comes from Connor McDavid. Hey, Connor. No, it comes from Ian. Ian at Sask Leaf fan on Twitter. Oh, it's Saskatchewan Leafs fan. How fun. Adam, can you tell me about when Western Canada was settled? Love the show. Get some Canadian history in this new segment.
Canadian history. Okay, so Western Canada is an interesting story because Western Canada almost became Western United States. For instance, at a certain point, Fort Calgary, which at the time was just a fort, flew an American flag for many years. Yeah. And it's the 49th parallel, right? That runs along. That wasn't agreed to until much, much later. So what happened was the British had some fishing rights, and there was a fellow named George Vancouver who discovered a lot of the BC, what is now BC kind of coastline. So they had some sort of settlement there, and what they couldn't agree on with the Americans was where their settlement ended and the Americans began. And especially, you guys remember Oregon Trail, right? So there was the whole thing was America was trying to settle that part of the world, and Manifest Destiny, which is a very American concept, was part of we want everything west of here. basically. And the Canadian government and, at the time, the British government agreed because they didn't want to go to war again on some boundaries that existed. But for a long, long time, you had British Columbia, and then you had Upper and Lower Canada, which are Quebec and Ontario. And then you had New Scotland, Nova Scotia. You had New Brunswick and Newfoundland, which didn't become a Canadian province until 1949. And so during Confederation, there were one of the major things that Canada had to do when they had their conference in Charlottetown. Guys like George Brown and John A. Macdonald and, other people that we've never heard of before because we're horrendous at teaching our own history.
Unless you went to George Brown.
Did you go to George Brown?
No.
George Brown actually is one of the, in terms of founding fathers in Canada, one of the most important, because there was they were locked in, and he compromised with Sir John A. Macdonald, allowed Sir John A. Macdonald to become the first prime minister. But what they did was they said, okay, the first thing we're going to do is build a railroad. So we build it right across the prairies so that we can tie both ends of Canada together. That was what the thing was, because at the time if you wanted to go to BC, you were literally sailing around the southern tip of South America. If you wanted to go from it would have been faster and easier to do that than it would have been to cross the country, because the country is huge. It's such a big place. It's wild. And at the time, there wasn't much in the way of settlement going on beyond, there were settlements and that sort of thing, but you had the Plains Native Canadian Aboriginal peoples. You had a significant Métis population, and a lot of them were fur traders and trappers. And what they did was when they built this railroad, they would actually give certain counties. So you would bid on sections of the railroad. So if you were, let's say you're Toronto, and you're responsible for building this part of the railroad, you would get it leased to you from the government, and you would be given a time frame to build it, and you would be given a budget. And if you came in under budget, you got to keep the money. So the government would say, here's $100,000, build this section of railroad. If you build it for $50,000, then you get to keep the other $50,000. The problem with that strategy is that there are certain spots in Canada that are very inhospitable and very hard to put a railroad track over. So what happened is a lot of counties just went under, just completely got destroyed by this financially, because they thought they could do it cheaply. They ended up not being able to do it cheaply, and they ended up bankrupting themselves trying to get it built because they agreed to build it.
Right. So a bunch of them were just like, hey, let's just try and do this for $5,000 and keep the rest of the 95. And then it failed.
Because it was kind of considered like economic stimulus too, right? It would help build communities around the railroad track, because they knew from what they saw in Europe and what they saw in the United States that communities sprung up around the railroad, and that's what they needed. They needed people out there. So and a lot of how they built the railroads through the Rocky Mountains was imported Chinese labor, which was cheap, almost free, and they treated these guys terribly and tried to send them back afterwards. And I mean, the first Asian communities in this country were because of labor and specifically railroad building. So it'd be Chinese or Japanese people that had come over, were treated horrendously, given nothing, died. The death rate is, and I don't have it obviously on hand, the death rate from the TNT detonations alone, or falling off a cliff or whatever. Like, you can imagine chipping away on the side of a mountain, sitting on a plank, like a 2x4 with a rope. And that was it. And there was thousands of feet below you, and you were lowered down there at the beginning of the day, and you were hopefully brought up at the end of it. That's how it went. It was crazy.
But it doesn't happen here.
Deep-seated racism here. So then what they did was, and this is because they were, there was racial policy here as well. They wanted to pull immigrants who were great farmers in from Europe. So they went to Eastern Europe, and they went to places like the Ukraine, and that's why you have a lot of Ukrainians in Western Canada, because they were great plains farmers. The wheat farming which in Canada is great, is also enormous in the Ukraine. So if they could bring poor Ukrainians over who knew how to farm wheat, that was really good because the Western Canada is the breadbasket of the country. And especially back then, it was really important. So you have a ton of Ukrainians coming out on these trains. You have native peoples, as always in North America, pushed to backwoods reserves. You have buffalo herds. They would stop the trains if they found a buffalo herd and literally just shoot all the buffalo, and leave them. They wouldn't take them with them. They wouldn't harvest the meat. They wouldn't do anything. Just shoot them. It's a crazy story of for a lot of families when they got out west, it was very, very hard to get supplies. If you got the supplies, you would be able to hopefully build something, but you had to build something. And as we know in Western Canada, building a house is hard. Surviving a Western Canadian winter is hard. It's minus 40. It's windy. Aren't a lot of trees and a lot of crazy hard. Imagine that you're living in a peat moss hut, because that's how most people, most families with babies, spent their first winter. They spent them in these little peat moss mud huts. And that's how they built this country.
I don't know what peat moss is.
Peat moss is a thick, it's like a thick, muddy sort of thing that, like, it's how do I explain this? Hang on.
Peat moss sounds like a fourth round draft pick of the Everett Silvertons.
It sounds like.
So I
was gonna say a wide receiver, but I'm just thinking Randy Moss.
So peat moss is sort of it's a mud or a soil, but there's this kind of green ground cover that grows up around it, and it's really tough, and it works out west because you got to be a tough plant to grow out west.
It's like soil that looks alive.
Yeah, basically, and it's a little and it's sort of clumpy, so you could build things with it, and it would be like wood framed, and then you'd stick peat moss in it, and that would be it.
Home Depot is out of stock of Miyoko Grow peat moss.
It's good stuff. It's really healthy. Like, it's great earth, great lots of nutrients in it if you're a gardener. So yeah, the Western Canada was settled a lot by that, and by pushing people off their lands, and all the typical stories that you hear. There was a great migration in the United States. We all know about the Oregon Trail and about California and that sort of thing. Sort of the same thing in Canada, only we put out posters across Eastern Europe in Eastern European languages saying, hey, come out and farm here, and completely lied to people, right? It was like, you'll be millionaires. Like, it was, there was no advertising standards councils back then, right? So it was like, the streets are paved with gold. It's fantastic. You could never, and a lot of people end up just disappearing and dying.
It's pictures in the summer.
Yeah, exactly. It's 12 or 10 months of the year you can't farm, and then the other 2 months you're working your ass off. So it's a crazy story. I wish I could go into more detail than that, but it is
more
a foundational section of the country. Yeah, I know. We could do a whole
Adam.
That was a lot of detail.
Yeah. Anyway, there you go.
Awesome.
Such an Adam thing to say. Oh my God.
Well, because actual historians would be like,
you said what their homes were made of, Adam.
Well, yeah.
I wish I could have gone more into depth than the thing I talked about for 15 minutes straight. Like, with no help from my co-hosts whatsoever.
You don't remember the Pete Moss Hut stories?
No.
To end the show, do you guys want to play Who Had More? Leafs all-time stats?
Yes, let's do it.
All right.
Love this game.
This game, do we want to do game-winning goals or penalty minutes?
Game-winning goals.
Yeah?
Game-winning goals.
Game-winning goals? All right.
Yeah.
First up, Tim Horton.
Oh.
Or James Van Riemsdyk. Who had more game-winning goals?
I think this is a trick question. It's James Van Riemsdyk. You want me to pick Tim Horton? Because
Tim Horton scored very few goals as a Leaf. He was like a rock solid Gronk-looking defenseman. Mm-hmm. I am going to say JVR.
Tim Horton played 1,184 games as the Toronto Maple Leaf.
Wow.
JVR,
just with the Leafs?
JVR played 413. JVR scored 20 game-winning goals. Tim Horton scored 19.
Oh, hey, there you go.
Good job, guys.
Wow.
All right.
Wait, he scored 19 game-winning goals?
I'm surprised he scored 19 goals, man.
Yeah,
Here, let me
Not a
look.
goal scorer.
Tim Horton scored 115 goals over his 1,445 NHL game career.
That's not bad.
So you're telling me more than 10% of the goals he scored were game winners?
High ratio.
His career high was 12.
Performs under pressure.
All right.
12 is higher than I thought.
Who has more game-winning goals? Jonas Höglund or Vincent Damphousse?
Vinny Damphousse scored a lot for the Leafs.
But he wasn't a Leaf for very long.
No, they should have kept him, though, I think.
Vinny Damphousse played for garbage Leafs teams, but they were in the 80s.
And he was on the line with Russ Courtnall, wasn't he? The kid
Yeah,
line?
but so here's the thing, though. It's not that he scored – I bet he scored more goals. But game winning is completely circumstantial.
Mm-hmm.
So
I'm going to say Höglund because he would have been on the ice with Sundin. And they would have won more games.
I'm going to say Damphousse because if Höglund had a brain in his head, he would have passed it.
Damphousse had 16 game-winning goals. Jonas Höglund had 15.
Yes!
Wow.
Wow.
All right, next up.
It's shocking that Höglund had that many. It's
Yeah.
shocking.
Yeah.
Next up is Paul Henderson or Austin Matthews.
Ooh.
Who had more game-winning goals, Paul Henderson or Austin Matthews?
I remember the story with Matthews in his rookie season when he scored those 40 goals is he led the league in first period goals. And if you score in the first period, it's probably not a game winner. But the other option is Paul Henderson, who
was not a big scorer.
A lot of hockey guys hate when his name gets brought up with regard to the Hall of Fame because he was very good. But it's not the Hall of Very Good, and I scored a big goal once. Which is disrespectful, but kind of true.
I interviewed Paul Henderson a couple times, and he says that too.
Yeah, I guess.
He's not shy about that. He said, I was a good player, but I wasn't a
star. Not an all-timer.
No.
He was on Team Canada. So was Rob Zaminer, man. People can have good stretches. I'm going to say Maddie. I'm going to say Austin Matthews.
And I'm going to say Paul Henderson.
All right. Paul Henderson had 22 game-winning goals.
Oh, that's so many.
Oh. That's a lot.
That's a lot. Austin Matthews has 23. Austin Matthews.
Already?
Correct answer. Yes.
That's a lot, man. That's a lot.
He's very high on the list. He's 26th all time.
That's embarrassing. Leafs. Embarrassing.
Yep.
Draft more talent.
Wow.
I hope the next 100 years are better than last.
Simply get the first pick more.
Next up, Dougie Gilmour or Alexei Ponikarovsky.
Ooh. Dougie.
Pony was a Leaf forever.
He was. And Dougie wasn't. 5.5 seasons or something?
Dougie wasn't, and he wasn't a goal scorer, but the Leafs won games when Doug Gilmour was a Leaf.
Ponikarovsky was put with Sundin because he was literally ineffective with everybody else.
They called him the Skyline. Bill Peters called him the Flatline, though. It was Sundin, Ponikarovsky, and Antropov, which in NHL 2006 was just this coming down the end. I am going to say Dougie.
I will say Dougie.
You guys are both saying Dougie? Dougie had 13 game-winning goals. Ooh. Alexei Ponikarovsky had 12. Correct. Boys. Good job.
Wow. Let's go. And all of those were assisted by Matt Sundin. All of them. I bet. I would put money on it.
Oh, my God. Probably.
All right. Next up, this will be our final one. We'll go with John Tavares or Zach Hyman.
For crying out loud.
So here's the fun part about game-winning goals is they really are not indicative of any sort of talent. And that's why I wanted to do it. Like, if you go penalty minutes, it's sort of, which guy's tougher, plays dirty, or whatever. What era did they play in? That sort of thing. Game-winning goals are just it's jump ball, man. You don't know. I'm going to say Zach Hyman.
I bring this story up all the time. The Leafs lost a game 1-0 to the Devils when I was a kid, and the Devils scored in the first 2 minutes, I think it was. So whoever scored that goal got the game-winning goal.
Right.
Like, that's not scoring in minute 2 of 58 2 of 60 is not clutch.
No.
Who are our two options again?
John Tavares and Zach Hyman.
I'm
going to say JT. He scored the OT winner at the Vegas game that we had a live podcast at. I'm going to say JT.
JT had 12 game-winning goals.
Already?
Yeah, already. Zach Hyman is 302 games played. 10.
5 for 5?
Well done, Steve.
Did I go 5 for 5?
I don't think so.
Did I get the first one?
I don't know.
What was the first one?
Well, I think you got them all right.
I don't have the list.
Didn't we both go JVR?
Yeah.
JVR over Tim Horton.
Yeah,
or was
you
it
got
Tim
it
Horton
all. You got it all right. You did.
There you go.
Well done.
I am good at guessing blindly. Yeah.
I resigned myself to the fact that it would be an absolute fluke if I ever beat Steve at anything regarding trivia. It's just not going to happen.
No.
Even because this is the one thing about Steve is that he knows so much and remembers so much about this one subject that his guesses are going to be better than anybody else's guesses that I know.
Okay.
It's true.
More educated guess.
I didn't enjoy the emphasis you put on one thing.
Well, I mean,
I didn't enjoy
what do you know that is anywhere?
All.
Your depth of knowledge with hockey is astounding.
Mm-hmm.
It's astounding.
It's incredible.
Now,
Thanks.
Your depth of knowledge with putting together barbecues maybe leaves a little to the imagination.
Or negotiating car deals.
Like, you should have seen the sheer amount of wounds I had on my body after assembling that barbecue. They have sharp parts. It was just sliced and diced. It was awful.
Sounds awful.
Yeah, and negotiating cards. Okay, listen, all right? I know I'm the dumbest, least capable person on this show, but I know how to guess things, so whatever. I'm smart. SMRT, 5 for 5.
Before we go here, can I also just say I threw up a thing on my Instagram of some my favorite works about racism and the Black community. And I just, because a lot of the questions right now are like, hey, what can I do? So I wanted to be like, hey, here's a whole bunch of options. If you want to watch a Netflix documentary, I threw one in there. It's called The 13th on 13th Amendment. If you want to read a book, I got a book there. If you want to listen to a podcast, there's a podcast. If you want to read an article, I got something to read. If you want to watch a TED Talk, there's something there. I just want to make it easy for anybody who's like, what's the next step? I think the next step is educating. So if you want to go there and take a look, there's a link to everything I've outlined there. Go do some educating and then try and help.
The Steve Dangle Podcast. Follow the guys on Twitter at Steve_Dangle, at Adam WYLDE, and at Jesse Blake. Brought to you by Panago Pizza. Order at panago.com and stuff your face with deliciousness. Connection complete.